Well, am I excited to be sitting here today? For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sally Murphy. I'm a communications consultant, coach, author, and storyteller. And it is such a thrill for me to be here today with, I'd say, one of Ireland's best storytellers and experts in the AI space. And I'm proud to say, a friend, a peer, a mentor, and of course, a fellow Donegal woman, Joanne. It's so good to be here with you today to talk about your new book. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and there's nobody else I'd rather have this conversation with right now but you, so thank you.
I am so privileged. I was thrilled when you asked me to come and do this. And just so people know, we haven't prepared this. We know each other well. We're getting to know each other better all the time, and that's a beautiful thing. But we're going to have a conversation today about the journey you've been on with this book. We'll probably go a little bit further back than that as well. And we're going to see where this conversation takes us. Are you up for that?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay, so first of all, I want to begin by letting you know what my experience of the book has been so far. And I haven't had a full experience yet because I don't have the physical book in my hands. I've read it on my iPad, I've read it on my phone. So I can't wait to have that book in my hands. And, you know, I'm not just saying this when I say I know that this book is going to be one of the books that I annotate and have post-it notes in and dog ear, because I'm a dog ear person, I'm sorry to say, with my books. It is the book that I needed to read right now at this stage in my career as a communicator, as a storyteller, but also as a citizen of the world. And so, I just want to let you know that I have found the book to be incredibly valuable and useful already, and I'm really grateful to you that you wrote it. What sort of initial feedback are you getting from the book and from the people who've read it?
So there were around 30 advanced readers who received the copy, and I was very grateful for that because, you know, you want to know how the market will receive it more broadly. And of course, the reviews appear in the book. But generally, the feedback has been really good. And I think an element of surprise. So AI is a relatively new topic for all of us. We're all starting at AI ground zero, wanting to go to AI hero and really add value to our industry with that knowledge. So people have been expressing surprise that they were engaged, surprise that it was an easy read compared to what they expected, and surprise that they felt empowered after reading it. So, and I want it to be a gift to the market, to the people that I know. I work with communications and marketing professionals. They are my peers. I have huge respect for them. And I wanted to gift them a leg up, a head start, and career progression, feeling confident and empowered. So early feedback is good. Let's see what the mass market says.
Yeah, for me, what I loved about it was I felt like you were taking me by the hand in a very gentle and firm way. You know, you tell me in the book that this is a non-negotiable. That and to quote actually one of the people that you referenced, Mark Schaefer, you say that if you live in a world of fear, everyone's going to pass you by. He said those words, I think, on your podcast. So one of the things that it did for me in the book was it drove home to me that this idea of AI and how it impacts my business, my world, my communications, everything isn't something that I can ignore because I'm afraid of it or I don't like it or I wish things were the way they were 10 years ago. It's do or die, right? So for me, in many ways, the book was, yes, you're taking me by the hand. You're taking me on this journey through ethics, through leadership, the tip sheets, thank the Lord, the glossary of terms, oh my goodness, yes, right? You go from there to tools. Like you give me everything I need. But really, it's a call to arms. Do you feel that way about it?
I can only do so much, and the book will take you as far as you're willing to go. And I really wanted that level of trust in me to transcend not just me in the book, but to reverberate back to the reader and for them to trust themselves that they can lead in the era of AI. But not only that, but it's imperative that they do, because a world where there are more bots than humans is a dangerous world. A world where AI is in the hands of more people with nefarious intentions than people who are using AI for good is a dangerous world. And we need to accelerate AI adoption, because if we don't, we're going to have lots of vacuums and lots of problems. And so I was acting as that trusted guide, that trusted friend, but you're absolutely right. I can only bring people so far. They need to commit to the action in the book. And that's why there are primers, there's theory, there's a little bit of academia, but there's a lot of practice. And so I remember Tricia Sweeney saying in her review, I was writing my to-do list as I was reading it. Yeah. And I was like, yes, that's what we want.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I love that. I totally relate to what Tricia said there, because, you know, as I'm reading it, I'm like, okay, there's a plan that's formulating for me, you know. I suppose what I think of when I hear you talk about that idea of trust, and trust is something that I talk about so often in my own work and with my clients, in terms of the stories that we tell to ourselves, the stories that we tell to other people, and the role of storytelling as a tool to build bridges of trust, and how quickly trust can be eroded. Of course, Stephen Covey calls trust the glue, right? And everything stands on that. But we live in an era where trust is at an all-time low in many ways, and understandably so. And you talk about that in the book. And we'll talk later on more about the threats and the fears of AI, but trust being eroded and attacked, deep fakes, fake news. I mean, recently I had an experience where I think it was a courier company, and they were trying really hard to get me to answer their text to let me know that I needed to pick up my parcel. And by God, I was not clicking on that link. I just won't do it. Doesn't matter who sends me a text. If there's a link attached to it, I'm not opening it. Right? So that idea of trust and how we human beings are going to be able to navigate our way through these turbulent changing times. I love the way that you address that in the book, because you're not shying away from the hard stuff in the book, are you?
No, not at all. I think I had to be straight, firm, as you said, because there are two sides to every coin. And let me tell you, the AI coin, it's multifaceted, but for sure, you need to understand the risks in order to embrace the opportunity. And that's why there's a chapter called Risk versus Reward.
Yeah. So let me go back a little bit to your origins. One of the things that I loved about the book so much, and one of the things that pulled me in irresistibly from the very beginning, was the fact that you open it up with your story. And so for anyone who hasn't yet read the book, or if they haven't heard you tell your story, let us know how you open your book on AI. What does the reader first learn about you when they open the pages of your fantastic new book?
So I drop the reader right into a scene in the journalism classroom at the University of Galway. And the year is 2000. And I have music, obviously. The soundtrack to this book has been Pulp's Disco 2000. I've played it on Spotify endlessly as I've been writing. Because there was a moment before I wrote the book and I was thinking about, well, where are we now? You know, that shorthand that I learned as a student journalist, that touch typing as I learned as a student journalist, it's all obsolete. Well, touch typing still has a value. And then I remembered it's 25 years since I sat in that classroom. So the reader is dropped in, and it's our touch typing class with our lecturer, and I have a snazzy blue iMac, like back in the year 2000. Like, I thought I was queen, right? Sitting there. And my buddy, Billy, who is now an editor in a national newspaper, was sitting beside me, and you have the same seats. And we were doing the touch typing, and I'm a kiddo, I'm left-handed, and I was like, I just couldn't grasp it. And I was huffing and puffing, and I said, Billy, I won't need this skill. I'm going to have assistance, right? And Billy's chuckling at me, and then I just hear the footsteps, and I feel the breath of my tutor coming over my shoulder. And he said, Miss Sweeney, journalists don't have assistants. Keep typing. And today it's 2025 and I can touch type, but I do have assistants, some human and some AI. And also at that time, I guess I was the editor of the newspaper, a student newspaper in the University of Galway, Cool Canch, which we rebranded to Student Independent News, SIN, which still remains today, 25 years on. And my daughter Sophie was 5 years old at that stage. And so there was always this battle of committing to my education and committing to motherhood. And I also partied like a great student, and I had a wonderful time back there. And, you know, writing was always my outlet. It was my way to organise my thoughts, my feelings. And I would say it kept me alive on many occasions when there were dark days. And, you know, I recount the story of Sophie being by my side and being a constant. And there's a photograph in that early chapter of Sophie and I in the grounds of the University of Galway, and we're holding hands. And that was taken by an Irish Times photographer for an article that I wrote, for which I won Student Journalist of the Year. And, you know, life always comes full circle. And going to university on a bus after picking up my Leaving Cert results and knowing that this piece of paper was going to change my life and Sophie's has come true. You know, on the night of the 25th of February 1996, I met her dad in a nightclub in Donegal. We were on a night out and I was picking up my coat at the end of that night, and I saw two young lads run by me and they had missed their bus home. And when I came out, Sophie's dad, Henry, was driving and he had the two lads in the car. And I said, "Who are these guys? What are you doing?" He said, "They missed their bus. They missed their bus. I'm going to give them a lift home," in true Henry style, thinking of everyone else. And he says, "Jump in." Like I was going to jump in. I'd picked up my coat. But in that moment, I said, "You know, I'll wait for you. I'll wait." And I waited, and unfortunately, none of the three of them came back, because within 10 minutes, there was a car crash, and two of them had died instantly, and Garrett lived for a couple of days, and my world was rocked. My life changed forever. Sophie was now down to one parent, and I felt the weight of that responsibility huge on my shoulders. And so my intention to educate myself got so much deeper than before. Like I read Yeats to her, I read Shakespeare to her, home economics recipes. I mean, she thought they were nighttime stories. They were, but that was my study. And so when I brought her to the university with me and I got my place in the university, and actually when I got my place in the journalism postgrad, there were only 13 places. So I'd spent the 3 previous years working towards getting that place, because writing was my outlet. And I wanted to change the world, Sally. Those 13 young journalists, we all wanted to change the world with our writing. And I'm not sure how many of us still remain in journalism, but we're all in some form of communications. And so my world has changed from journalism to now AI.
So I want to just come back here and help contextualize this for people who are watching and listening. So when we meet you in the book, you like you say, you use that beautiful storytelling technique in media res of bringing us right into the centre of the moment. You know, we're in the classroom with you. You know, we're touch typing. I can see the blue Mac laptop. And by the way, why did they stop making those beauties? So I can visualize all of that. But then I discovered that you have a daughter, and then in the book we see that photograph of you and Sophie, and it is a fantastic photograph. We don't know the backstory to that. So in the book, we see the photograph of you and your little daughter. We don't see the pain and the devastation and the trauma that you're both carrying with you. So help me understand from a time frame perspective, where are you from that awful night in Donegal where in some strange twist of fate you say, no, I'll wait. No, I'll wait, Henry, come back and get me. And you wait and you wait and you must have waited and waited and at some point given up the wait and gone home and at some point heard the devastating life-altering news that Henry was never going to come and collect you ever again. What age were you when Henry died?
So I was 18 years old and Sophie was 5 months old.
My God, Joanne. Like, because we will all have a sense of the ricochet effect of that, a young life. For a moment, just tell me a little bit about Henry. What was he like? And do you see him in your daughter? Because I know Sophie's grown now and has achieved great things, but tell me a little bit about Henry.
So Henry was charismatic, very outgoing, hugely caring about everybody. He worked in the Rossapenna Hotel in Downings as a sommelier, wine waiter, and everybody loved him. The regulars would come back every year from Northern Ireland, from America, and they'd wait for him to burst through the double doors from the kitchen into the dining room that overlooked Downings Bay.
Yeah.
And I met him. I was washing dishes in that hotel. And now, listen, I was very hot and sweaty with that industrial dishwasher. And I never knew what he saw in me, but we fell in love. He was my first love. And
what did he say he saw in you?
He said that he saw a beautiful energy, a beautiful person, somebody who was carefree and fun, and probably somebody who was very deep and very shy, and probably saw a lot of what nobody else saw because I was too afraid to be my authentic self. Yeah.
And so you have this beautiful love affair. You're young, you're in love, you're in arguably the most beautiful county in Ireland. There's nothing better than a gorgeous Donegal man, in my opinion.
Agreed.
And you become pregnant with your first daughter. And how is Henry, how does he feel about that?
I will not mince my words here. It was very stressful. If you think about the timeline, it is 1994 when I find out that I'm pregnant. We are just towards the end of the era of the Magdalene laundries and babies and single parents being shuttered away where nobody can see them. And so there was stigma, probably shame. But I remember my assertiveness and just my commitment to the baby to say, I will take responsibility and I will raise my child. And Sophie was born on the 14th of September, 1995. And she was a week overdue, and I'd had one doctor's appointment. I don't believe I had any scans because, listen, I was young and I just didn't really want to tell anyone. I was afraid. And she came really quickly in the end, and she was just black hair, brown eyes, just gorgeous like him. And my mother's last time seeing Henry was when he came down to pick her up and he'd bought her a car seat. And she said he was so proud and he was going to show her off to all his friends and family. And he emptied his pockets of all his money. And he says, give that to Joanne. You got to remember, there wasn't money back then.
I know, yeah.
There wasn't money.
Yeah, it was a different world.
Different world. My mother was supporting me. Yeah. I was getting lone parents and he was working that job. He had some cows. As a part-time farmer. And off he went with such pride. And actually, my last conversation with him was when I said I would wait. He said, do you and Sophie love me? And I said, we love you so much. And he said, you're still very sexy and you're still a great dancer. And I said, now, don't be showing off. And off he went. And we looked at each other, and never for a moment did I think that would be the last time, until, as you said, I gave up waiting and finally got a taxi home. And the next morning, my mother walked in my bedroom door, and I just knew. I said, "He's dead, isn't he?" And she said, "Yeah." And Sally, I lost my hearing for 3 days. The shock, the trauma, just the emptiness of not being able to see him again. And actually, there hasn't been a day in those 26 years that I haven't spoken to him. And only as recently as 48 hours ago, 2 nights ago, I dream about him frequently. And we're in the cottages where I grew up in Downings in Largonaria, and I'm at the top cottages, and I'm on the steps of a house, and he's on the pavement outside, and he's dancing. And I'm like, "Why are you dancing like that?" He says, "I've never left. I'm always here."
Oh my God.
So that's a recurring theme that comes up. And I guess I pray to him. He's my God.
Yeah.
And I always ask him to mind Sophie and Bobby, who was then born on her birthday 14 years later, and his grandchildren.
And his grandchildren.
His grandchildren.
There's so much pain in this story, and I feel so much compassion for you, and I know the story, but every time I hear you tell it, I'm struck by the cruelty of that experience, that unfair blow that you were dealt, the loss. You're 18 years old, you've had this baby, your body, emotionally, physically, in every way, socially, culturally, there's all of this stuff that you're grappling with. You have this beautiful boy in your life, this new father, and it's taken away from you. And I feel that pain, the loss of that. And I also am struck every time I hear you talk about this or reflect on it, with the strength that is present in the telling of it, and also in the choices that you made in the aftermath of it. Because from that moment that your mother walks into the bedroom and tells you the thing that you somehow already know, because he would have come back to get you that night. There's no way he wouldn't have, and you knew that. So from that moment to the moment that photograph is taken with you and Sophie in Galway, what's the time difference there?
Yeah, so that's about 4.5 years.
Yeah.
And when Henry died, I just made a promise to Sophie: I will raise you the best that I can. I will give you an education, but I will educate myself first. And you will have a life as if 2 parents raised you, and I will love you like 2 parents.
Joanne, do you think that Henry's death was a catalyst for that, or would you have done that anyway?
I'm not sure I would have done it anyway. A lot of my friends, would have said that, having Sophie saved me. It really grounded me. I really focused on my education. Like, I went to my principal, Cathal Green, in the Mulford Vocational School, now Mulroy College, when I was about 6 months pregnant. And I said, "Sir, I want to come back to school. After the Halloween break, the baby will be 6 weeks old." And he punched me on the shoulder and he said, "All right, Sweeney," he said, "but same rules apply. Wear your uniform, do your homework." And I said, "No problem, sir." And that school really minded me. They minded me in that they saw Joanne. I came to school and I was able to be me, and not just the single parent or the teenage mother. And I flourished. And would you believe, he and Miss O'Donnell actually used to bring me to my leaving cert exams. Such was the influence of that school. And then subsequently, the influence of the University of Galway. I had support from the Students' Union. I got the cloakroom job. I got the job in Smokies in their cafe. I, got help when I didn't have a deposit, when I was moving house. Margaret Fletcher, I always beat the door to her. She was the student counsellor. And again, she saved me on numerous occasions. So education has been such an important theme in my life that it's probably no accident that I'm an educator by trade and also a communicator. And that's why I love sharing knowledge and empowering people with knowledge, because I know what it's done for me, and I'm just so generous with it. But certainly those years were tough, Sally. I mean, I think we should have other podcasts and other conversations because there's so much I could talk about. But Sophie came to lectures with me. She came to that journalism classroom with me. And fast forward 25 years, and she is standing in those lecture halls in front of 500-600 students. She's a lecturer there.
It's beautiful. It's incredible. It's beautiful, and to see that full circle, and to see the family unit that has been born out of that village in Donegal, and the success and the legacy, and of course, and I know that you feel this, and I suppose that's maybe what the dream is about, somewhere, Henry is cheering you all on, his daughter, his partner, and his grandchildren. I'm interested in this story because, when I'm doing work with the people that I do work with, what we always look at is this idea of origin story, where do I come from? What am I made of? How was I forged in the fire? And, we call those crucible moments in storytelling where you're melted down and you emerge different. And this story of your loss and your then resolve to carve out a different pathway, a new pathway for both you and your daughter, taking the lead, is one such perfect example of a crucible moment. And to hear that you were reading Sophie Yates and, the classics when she was a child, I just find that to be so moving, And of course, I have had the privilege of meeting your daughter, and I know how wonderful she is. So that, for me, is one of the things that's so potently persuasive and compelling about the book. It's the fact that you're bringing us on this journey through this ultimate virtual reality tool, right? AI, right? This absolutely incredibly fast, modern isn't even the word for it, digital, but you're using this ancient art of storytelling. So you're mixing those two things together so beautifully. One of the things I will say to you, and I hope that you know this, is that you are an extraordinary writer. I mean, do you know that?
Well, it's great to hear from an extraordinary writer that you think that. Writing is personal, Sally. You know this.
Yeah.
Releasing your writing to the world is nerve-wracking, especially when it's a book about AI. And I did a radio interview this morning before coming here. And the first question from the interviewer was, so you've written a book about AI. Tell me, did you use AI to write the book?
Yeah.
And that's going to be always the question.
Yeah.
And I said, I believe that when people read the book, they will hear my voice and they will hear my tone. Because when I started working with Orla Kelly, my publishing partner, and she hadn't read any of my previous books or my work, she said, wow, you're such a conversational writer. And I said, I know I'm not an academic writer. I like to write how I speak and make it accessible. But thank you so much. It's such a compliment coming from you. And I love writing.
Yes, I know you do. And that's one of the things that I wrote about the book. I can see it written down in my notes here in front of me. I've written an incredible mix of both strategy and soul, which is true. There's this pulse, this heartbeat that you generate throughout the entire book. But the strategy is there, the tables are there, the terms are there, and I have a question about that in a minute, actually. I've written it's easy to read. I don't feel like throwing it across the room. And then I wrote feels human, beautiful tone of voice throughout. So, that is really present in your writing. But I think that one of the things that I notice, and this is why it stands out from something that is written by AI, is that human tone of voice and a sense of pleasure. I get the sense as I'm reading the book that you really enjoy talking to me through the pages. Is that right?
It's so true. And I thoroughly enjoyed writing this book. And in previous books, I used to write in early mornings and at weekends. And for some reason, with this book, I wanted to finish my dinner quickly and get back up to my breakfast bar, put on Pulp on Spotify and just write.
Yeah.
And because I'm so excited about AI and what it can do for good, and my whole tribe of communicators that need to come. There's an urgency in my writing, but also a definite intention and passion there. And, you know, the book was, as writers do, you rewrite things over and over again. I'm like my editor's nightmare. You know, can we let it go? Just not yet. Give me one more day.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed writing. And I'm so glad that you picked that up.
I feel it in the words, and I think that, and I mean, you speak to this in the book, right? But I think that as we continue to hurtle forward in this AI landscape, and as we navigate change and disruption in the way that we are, I think that when more and more people are able to understand that what they need to do is to tap into their unique tone of voice, say the thing that they know they need to say, and not worry about it being perfect, and not worry about it being super polished. I mean, you spoke about this recently in a podcast episode of yours that I listened to, but it's that idea of, and in fact, you say it in your book. In the book, one of your quotes from the book is, "The real spark, the big idea, it still comes from you." And in the book, it's like you're carrying that spark page by page, chapter by chapter, and you don't let it go throughout the whole book, Joanne. It's really incredible to observe that and to experience that as a reader, because, you know, the topic of AI has the potential to be too hard to understand, boring, depressing, overwhelming, and not for me. But yet you created something different with this book. You invited me into your world. And I believe, and I'm biased, but I believe that the storytelling capacity that you have is a huge carrier of that spark, you know? I want to know about the love you have for writing and where that comes from. Now, I have the privilege of understanding the poetry of the landscape that you grew up against. And indeed, you open up the book, and I shrieked when I saw this with joy. You open up with a quote from Hemingway, right? That great author, right? What's the quote again? It says it's something about it begins slowly and then it happens quickly. I'm paraphrasing, right? But it's the perfect quote for the book. So you open this book on AI with Hemingway. There's poetry threaded throughout the book, moments, sparks, stories. Tell people about where that love of poetry, where that love of writing, where does that come from, and how did the place that you grow up in, the community, the landscape, how did it inform that approach?
So I grew up in a very newsy household. So there was news always on the wireless, as my father called it, from early morning. We'd wake up to Morning Ireland, to the BBC News at night on the telly, and then the ITV News, because of course we grew up in Donegal. So we got the access to the English channels for free, beaming in from the north. And we had newspapers, the Irish Farmers Journal, because my dad's a farmer, the Sunday Press, the Sunday World, and then sometimes maybe the Irish Star if there was enough money for a daily paper. So news was always in our house. And a funny story that's not in the book, and I should have put it in the book, but my brother is 4 years older than me, and there's 8 siblings. But we were really close, but very competitive, and he'd never let me win anything, but he was a great training ground. And we used to read the paper and pretend we were newsreaders. Yeah. And the competition was get to the end of this long form Sunday Press article without making a mistake. I don't know what the prize was, because I don't know, maybe I'd have to do his dishes or he'd have to do my dishes. And so news was there. But then
so we're going to have to create a bit where your brother and you now get on camera together, and that's a monthly segment. That's some type of content there right now. We want to see that.
Absolutely. And I hope I beat him, because he always used to beat me.
The competition's still there.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. But of course, he's a huge fan of mine, of course. But you talk about the landscape of Downings off Nadoonaf, you know, surrounded by beaches. If you go over the Atlantic Drive and you look to your left, you can see Scotland on a good day. You know, Boston is over the water. And then you come into Sheephaven Bay and, you know, you've got Muckish from my kitchen window. You know, you've got Downings Pier from my kitchen window. We were raised on those beaches. around the Atlantic Drive, and I just think it's in you.
It's in your DNA.
Absolutely.
It's the air that you breathe. It's the need for the wildness, and also I think a capacity to live on the edge. I think there's a resilience to coastal folk, and then particularly to people who lived in what was, traditionally, politically and historically an area that was deprived in many ways, cut off from commerce, cut off from, and people in those areas like Naduna, Downings, they had to create their own luck. They were also forged in the fire in many ways. And there is that, that strength that sings in your personality. And I think that you're very much informed by the place that you grew up in. And I know that you champion Downings, Naduna and Donegal at every opportunity to get, although we have lost you to Galway. So
you have.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're dealing with that, Joanne. I want to ask you about your love of learning. And the reason why I want to ask you about your love of learning, so a little while ago you talked about, and I love this moment where, the role of educators and the power of a good teacher, because I too have had that experience where teachers have helped me feel seen and that I belong and that I am welcome and that they believe in me. And those moments were turning points in my life. But that moment where the headmaster slaps you on the shoulder and he says, "Right, Sweeney," but the same rules apply. I just love that because he wasn't going to, you needed to show up, right? But I suppose what I wanted to say when you were recounting that story and then the support you got later in third level was that you obviously gave them something in return. There's a reason why they wanted to invest in you. They saw something in you, right? So I reflected on that as you were talking. But in reading your book, the book is really smart. Like you are really smart, right? The traversing through the technical terms, right? You see, the capacity to be able to take a complex subject, right, and make it easy or possible, not always easy, but possible, and at times enjoyable for an audience to understand, that takes huge intelligence and skill, right? So you're really, and the other thing about the book is the expertise. Like, an awful lot about AI. Now, I know you have a podcast and it's over 200 episodes, and I know you've run a successful marketing and communications business for over 20 years, and I know you wrote the book on AI, but even I, knowing all of that, was reading the book going, God, she's smart. Where does that capacity for intellectual rigor, that love of learning, that that there's a ferocity in it? Like, I don't believe that you would have let that book go with any part of it not being how you wanted it to be. So yes, we've got the storytelling and yes, we've got the soul, but there is rigor, academic and intellectual rigor woven throughout that book. Who taught you that? Who showed you that? Where did that come from?
I absolutely loved school. I used to do my homework 4 times. I'd rip out the...
Sorry, hold on a second. Just for the people in the back who didn't hear that, can you say that again?
I used to do my homework 4 times. I'd say, Joanne, that's not good enough. And I'd rip the pages out. I was 10 years old. Now, some people might say maybe I should have seen somebody about that. But I like to think that I was just tapping into that hunger and that insatiable need to gain knowledge. Yeah. But the other thing is, Sally, I always stayed in my own lane. I've stayed in storytelling, in communications, in reporting. And yes, I'm an educator now. I impart that and I, do strategy and advise. But I just loved getting an essay for a weekend. Everybody else would be slamming their fists on the desk. When our English teacher gave us an essay, I was like, let's go. I still remember the feeling of writing essays about Shakespeare. Yeah. about poetry. Then I studied English, sociology and politics at university, and the essays were longer.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow.
Did you handwrite your essay?
Yes.
I did English literature, handwrote my essays.
Handwrote them, you know, and then I did a master's in journalism and I had to do a thesis and I joined Highland Radio and I was a broadcaster and reporter and I was like, I'm getting paid for this.
Yeah.
So and also the storytelling and knowing that every human has multiple stories that are worth hearing, that need to be heard. And also the catharsis, it's so cathartic telling a story and releasing a story. And when you're heard and seen, that makes a huge difference. So I've always loved learning. And then, 10 years had passed since my second master's, which was in digital marketing. And I said, how are my peers and the market going to trust me if I don't have a qualification in this knowledge? So then I sought out, well, where can I find academia that will qualify me in AI?
Yeah.
And that led me to Harvard earlier this year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which was a dream that was never on my bucket list because I never thought it would be possible.
Why did you not think it would be possible?
I mean, I just didn't think that I could pull up a seat there.
Right. Yeah.
But when I did pull up my seat in July, I felt very at home.
You see, one of the things, and there are many that I really love and admire about you, is that we were together about 2 years ago at an event or something like that. And you said to me, I'm going to do more work in America. I'm interested in working in America. I'm interested in politics. I'm really pulled to that. And then, X amount of months later, I'm like, and now she's going to Harvard. There she goes. Off she goes, right? What I admire so much about you, again, is your tenacity. And also, and this is really important, that you stay ahead of the curve. You see, what people don't know is that, the first time I meet you then is when you're back in Highland Radio. And people used to talk about how good you were. Like the first time I heard somebody talk about you, it was because we have a mutual friend that you worked with. They were like, she's amazing. She's such a hard worker. She's so smart and she doesn't suffer fools, So your reputation preceded you and I've no doubt that it always did. And so I know that, this capacity to achieve and to stay ahead of the curve. I'm not one bit surprised that took you to Harvard, Joanne. I'm not one bit surprised that you realised that you needed to create a podcast, a bite-sized podcast, 6 minutes with a longer episode on a Saturday, AI6. You launched that at the start of 2025. And then in the summer of 2025, you take yourself off to Harvard, arguably the best university in the world. Tell me about that experience and tell me about the impact that experience had on the book, because you had already written most of the book by the time you got to Harvard. It was 85% complete, 90% complete.
Yeah, it was with my editor. She had the manuscript and she was just it was being proofread actually by Mary. Mary was proofreading it while I was in Harvard. And can I just say that I had the most wonderful experience. I'm so glad they let me in. And I made the list of 73 because there was, an application process and there was a wait list and some people had applied in consecutive years to get their place.
Oh, it's competitive.
It's competitive. And can I just say that picking up my Harvard satchel, going into the Hemicycle lecture hall and seeing Joanne Sweeney Digital Training Institute on a seat right in the middle. I think I got the best seat in the house. And being immersed for 10, 11, 12, 13 hours a day in AI and public policy with some of the best brains in the world, not just the professors, but the colleagues who attended. There were so many times, I was just saying this to my mother a couple of days ago, there were so many times when I was sitting in that seat where the emotion came from my toes up to my heart and I said, wow, this is amazing. I was so grateful to be there. And why am I crying? Because I went to Harvard.
Because it's emotional.
But it meant so much to me. And then I probably became annoying because I kept asking so many questions.
Well, I mean, you are the girl. The 10-year-old that did her homework 4 times is still in you. That 10-year-old that did her homework 4 times couldn't get over. You see, that's why you're emotional. Just to reflect that back to you, because, you know, the part about owning and telling our story that we have to journey through is about understanding that as part of that, we traverse emotions. It's emotions, and you talk about this in the book, it's emotions that make us stand out as human beings. And it's emotions that make our storytelling shine. They have to be managed properly. You know, when we're storytelling, we have to be able to, you know, stay above the story, but we shouldn't stay above the emotion. But we should never be afraid of becoming emotional, because it's beautiful to see how you're impacted and moved by the experience that you had. So I welcome that emotion, and I feel privileged to be able to see it in you, you know. What difference did it make then to the finalising of the book, that experience in Harvard?
So I added an extra chapter, risk versus reward.
Right.
And then I also added in some of the new knowledge and some of the great insights that our lecturers give us. I felt that I had to share that new knowledge with the readers. And so that's been peppered then throughout the book.
Yeah, because there is an interesting piece that happens in the book, and it kind of slightly freaked me out a little bit. It was the Paul bot.
Yes.
Experience. Can you just in brief explain to people what that was about?
So we were working towards creating our own AI assistant as a final assignment at Harvard. And we were able to use the ChatGPT equivalent belonging to Harvard, which was called Ping Pong. So it was a lockdown space. So it was a closed space. Your information was private and secure. So I decided to train my AI assistant in all of my knowledge. So I gave it a couple of my books, lots of trainings, and lots of podcasts. And Paul Bot was a political communications AI assistant. And I gave it some parameters and said, you're only advising Irish politicians, but it does include members of the European Parliament, so Irish politicians who are out in Europe. And it was 48 hours after the European Commission had announced their next 7-year budget. And so that was on the news. And I said, okay, the scenario is we have an MEP who's going to do an interview on Morning Ireland on RTE Radio 1 tomorrow. It's now 10 p.m. at night, using the knowledge that you've been trained in. Let's prep questions on these couple of angles. So Paul Bot got to work, and within 30 seconds, it had prepped a Q&A. And so I was doing that the night before the assignment was due, and I was like, and I recorded myself reviewing it as part of my presentation. I said, okay, I'd give her 75%. That's not bad, but it still needs me. So then the next day, 4 of us were invited to present, and thankfully I was one of them. But in creating our assistants, we had to get our colleagues, our peers in the classroom to try and break the bot. It's called red teaming.
Yeah.
So you get it to do things that it shouldn't do, because this is where we need to protect humanity and try and preserve integrity and ethics in all of the AI that we develop. So my colleague Ismat, who works in the Malaysian Ministry of Health, was using Paul Bot, and she was trying to get advice for her own country, for politicians in Malaysia. And then Jim, another colleague beside me, was trying to change the politics of Paul Bot and go against maybe how it was trained. And then I myself asked it to create a deep fake. So we were in that testing the bot, trying to break it. So it went to show you that within a few couple of days, I could create an AI assistant trained in all of my knowledge that actually would add value in my work.
Right. Yeah. It's incredible to see. And you go into great detail in that chapter, and it was the chapter, to be honest with you, it was the chapter that reminded me that I'm afraid of AI. And I want you to speak about that for a little moment, because, I studied at Harvard University recently I studied with Marshall Gans, and I studied public narrative. And my course was online, right? So I didn't have that experience of being on campus, and it's something I'd love to do. But one of the things that Marshall Gans in Harvard talks about is he says that in order for people to be moved to take action, two things must be present. There must be urgency, a sense of urgency. And there is a sense of urgency all around us at the minute. We are living in a geopolitical permacrisis. There is urgency around communications, around AI, around the environment. Everywhere we look, there's urgency. Added to that, we're distracted, we're overwhelmed, there's content shock, all of these things. It's worrying, right? So there's a lot of urgency. But he says the second thing that has to be present if we want to compel people to take action is hope. Now, in the book, I feel hope and urgency in your communications, in your writing throughout the chapters. But in that chapter, my hope got a bit shook again because I thought, and I want to ask you, how can we dispel the fear that we understandably have around AI? I'm going to try and not give you too many questions here. Are you afraid? I know you're positive, but what are you afraid of? How can we dispel the fear? And where is the hope? What did you leave Harvard with when you think about those two ideas around fear and hope? Can you speak to that?
I am afraid because I know the potential of AI. I know exactly how it can be used as a weapon in all aspects of society. And I am afraid that if I do not mobilize my community, that we are not going to have the communicators who, as you know, Sally, are the people who write the speeches in government, who read the news bulletins, who write the books, who do the research. If we don't empower and arm the communications professionals with the knowledge, and if they do not answer that call to arms, then I am fearful. My hope lies in that AI is about communication and not about coding.
You say that in the book. It's one of your big takeaways, isn't it?
Because you have to communicate with bots, you have to communicate with stakeholders, you have to communicate how you're using it, have explainability. And the legislation and the investment that governments right around the world, and I have all of those listed in the book, that are putting into AI is offering people that opportunity. But they need to step over the fear. They need to trust themselves. And let me just say this to people, and this is what I want people to walk away with, and it's really simple. AI plus me is better.
Right.
AI on its own is not better. I bring 25 years of lived experience, communications practice. I understand nuance when I walk into a room. Before anyone opens their mouth, I can feel the energy, right? I can look at their body language. I can see how they're looking at me. They know why we're here, but they're not really sure about me, okay? And I can navigate that. And by the end, more often than not, I'll have them on side and they will feel empowered. AI cannot do that. We need the human to be driving the bots and not the other way around. So if we all don't get on this bus, right, that bus is going to leave without us, and it's going to take a route that none of us want to go down. And you add the power of AI into the political systems, into other systems, into criminality. I mean, it's just a gift for the criminals and for, cyber criminals in particular. So AI plus me is better. We're bringing humanity, and I say in the book, humanity must reign supreme. We need to live. I dedicated the book to Maisie and Henry, my grandchildren. And I say that I hope AI gives them a world that is better than now. It will only be better if we all engage and empower ourselves and be on the side of good. It sounds very simplistic, but knowing what I know about the potential and the power of AI, I think that's what's needed. And in Harvard, we asked the big questions. We said, what about the data centers? What about the environmental impact? What about, more water for AI than for houses and for people? We asked them about whose responsibility is it? And the bottom line is it's all of society. Legislation will only get you so far. We need educators on board. We need schools. We need parents. We need us as individuals to be responsible and responsibly use AI. And we need journalists to tell the story and to communicate. So this is an all of society response, and we need the money to be directed in the right way. Right now, AI is in the hands of this number of companies on my two hands. They are controlling the trajectory of it. And so we need to, in some way, take back that control for the greater good, because companies are driven by commerce, right? They have common good policies, but we need to make sure that AI is in the right hands. So I'm scared, but I'm hopeful, but we need to mobilise.
And that is, like we've said, why the book is a call to arms, and it is why your voice in this space is so important. Because when I hear you talk about what we need to do now, I hear that you're talking not just to government leaders and not just to the CEOs of corporations. You're talking to me. You're talking to everybody who's listening to this podcast. This is a collective effort. One of the people that I studied with in Harvard, because you make great friends on that course, Friends for Life, we talked about the work that she's doing in Jordan, and she said to me, I said to her, I was asking her how she kind of continued to have the energy to do the activist work that she's doing. And she said to me, Sally, because every day I see that good community is dangerous. And she talked about the power of communities coming together to make a shift, to make a change. And I think that what we're seeing more and more in our society is that understanding that we need to come together in communities of twos, of threes, of 20s, in schools, in community groups, as well as in businesses and in corporates, to build the world that we want to be living in and that we want our grandchildren to be living in. And I suppose when I hear you talk about that, I see the red thread, Joanne. Like, I see the red thread from living beside the ocean and looking at the mountains in Donegal. I see the red thread of the girl who refused to not do her homework to the standard that she wanted to do it to the girl who wanted to beat her husband, her brother at the newscasting, to the girl who suffered devastation and loss and decided, no, I'm going to carve this new life for myself and for my daughter, this better way of being. I'm going to read Yeats. I'm going to go to university in Galway. I'm going to work on the Students' Union newspaper. I'm going to do a master's. I'm going to create my business and become an expert in public sector marketing. And now I'm going to lead the rally for how to work with and utilise and stay in front of and alongside AI. So I see the girl that you were, the woman that you were, and I can see how that has all come together to shape this book that we have, that you've created today. And all of that heart and soul and that rigour and that passion and that determination, that intellect, that wisdom, that heart, that humour, that honesty, all of that was given to you in the west coast of Donegal, with the family that you grew up with the teachers and the mentors and the community and the friends that helped you along the way. That is now what you're giving back to us. That's the richness of your experience. And indeed, you say in your book, I bet I've lived more life than ChatGPT.
Yeah, I have. And that's the point. ChatGPT predicts the next word. Did the cat sit in the mat? Or did the cat sit on the bag? The probability is that the cat sat on the mat. It's mathematics.
Yeah.
Where's the humanity in that?
Yeah.
Where's the lived experience? Yeah. Yes, it's collecting all of our lived experience that we're inputting because it's trained on content from the internet and now our use of it. But where's the humanity? We cannot lose humanity, community, heart, empathy. Where will our world be? So it's humans and bots, but for humanity to reign supreme. That's the goal.
And that's what you're leading out now with. Tell me about, you've written the book on AI, and I was thinking about this when I was reading it, right? I was like, well, what does she do now? Because if AI is going so fast, right? And it is, I mean, are you going to write another book in a year? Or tell me what's next. Where do you go from here? Because if I know you and if we listen to the journey that you've taken so far, from childhood to teens, 20s, to the work that you've done, to the successes that you've had. What's next for you in your world of work? What do you want to savor next?
I really want to be in those boardrooms and in those Zoom rooms having the conversations about how AI is shaping public policy, how it's impacting citizens, and how we're using it for good. And in order to, be a policymaker or a legislator, then you need to have the literacy. And I'm not sure that those decision makers have the literacy. And that makes me nervous, because this only came to be mainstream in November 2022 with the release of ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And we've been talking about it, and now we're playing with it. And so the urgency is mixed with a sense of, but who are the people that are making the decisions, and where is their motivation coming from? What is motivating them? I'm motivated by public good. I was a journalist. I went into journalism because I wanted to tell the stories of real people who needed to be seen and to be heard. Interestingly, I jumped the fence, and now I advise into government and communications, and I'm encouraging them to be better communicators. And now I'm saying, now you've got to use AI. So I really want to be at the heart of shaping policy for public good, and making sure that people are making the right decisions, but also asking the right questions. And I commit to staying ahead of the curve as long as it keeps evolving. But I would say that the book was written in the knowledge that AI is changing so fast that the book could be obsolete in 7 days. It's a framework. The book will not be outdated. The tools and the technology will change and expand. But certainly I'll do updated editions. But I don't know, watch this space. I need to go back and make new dreams, Sally.
So I think that I wouldn't be surprised if I see you continuing on your academic pathway. I mean, I won't be surprised if I see you going back to Harvard you'll probably go for the executive, the three pieces that you can do together. I suppose what I feel about the book is whatever happens in a year or 2 years or 5 years, it's the book that I need for now, because in a sea of information, in an overwhelming kind of tsunami of content, like I said at the start, I needed someone to come along and to take me by the hand and to say to me, it's okay, let's do these things and let me show you this. And if we start here, we're going to be able to get to the next place. It was an invitation for me to kind of get on the bus, if you like. And also, and this is a little bit uncomfortable for me, now that I know what I know from having read the book, I can't unknow it.
Good.
So it would be remiss of me as a businesswoman and as a citizen of the world, as a mother, as a person who cares about humanity and loves storytelling. It would be remiss of me not to take your advice. And I have no doubt that people who pick up this book are going to be altered by it. I suppose in closing, and as we move to the end of this conversation, and I could talk to you all day long, what is it that you want people to ultimately take away from this book? And what is the spark that, if they were to remember nothing else, that they put down that book and they were able to hold something close to them? What is that thing for you? What do you want to give people ultimately with your wonderful book?
I would say that your place in the world is secure, because what you bring to the AI era is intuitiveness and instinct for the profession that you've been working in for how many years. And what you need to do is you also need to coach not only the AI assistants, but the next generation who are maybe AI first, and they are coming to AI without that intuitiveness and all of that lived experience. So just remember, AI plus me is better, and your place is so important. So please take up my call to arms and be on the side of the army of AI for good.
I really hope that I know you will, because I know you operate at a high level. I know that you work with, governments and organizations of all sizes on a global scale. I know that you have your podcast. I know that you're highly reputed in the local authority sector, in the government sector, in the corporate sector. I really hope that they do pay attention to what you're saying, because I feel more at ease if I think that you're in the room with those people who are decision makers in the way that I'm not a decision maker. I want them to listen to you. I want them to read your book and pay attention to what you have to say, because we need them to hear that message. And so I really, really hope, and I believe it will, that you are in those circles of influence so that they can learn from you, because you have an awful lot to teach them. For the girl who grew up beside the sea against the backdrop of mountains, you have done so well. And I believe that you're only at the beginning of what is going to be another extraordinary chapter. I know that you're going to be in America soon, is that right?
That's right.
Gracing a big stage. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so literally in 72 hours from this airing, I will be standing on a stage in Planet Hollywood Hotel in Las Vegas, delivering a workshop first, but then a keynote to 600 government communications professionals from across the United States. And they will be getting the first practical insights from me on the book. So I've called it a soft launch. The big launch is in Ireland on the 12th of September in Dublin.
And you have a big schedule. I mean, it's a workshop as well as a launch, isn't it?
Yes,
one that's happening.
I want to gift them not only the opportunity to talk to me about the book, but to show them how to apply the book. So there's an AI masterclass and a book signing and a couple of guest speakers. So lovely 3 hours of getting people in a room, listening to them, answering their questions, and just priming people to start having real conversations about AI and how they're going to use it. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Joanne, as we say in Donegal, you are some woman for one woman. I think you're phenomenal. I think your smarts and your soul and your intelligence and your determination to share your voice for good is just so inspirational to me. You do inspire me, and I'm so glad that you're my friend and my peer. And thank you for talking to me today. I appreciate it greatly.
Well, Sally, the heart with which you brought the questions to the table, and just because you know me so well, I'm so glad that you said yes when I asked you, and you are a remarkable storyteller. I mean, the lilt, I just get hypnotized by the lilt. Obviously, it's the Donegal thing, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But Thank you so much, my friend. And I hope that you're turning the book into practice now.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And there's another book coming.
Excellent.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.